I'm George Galloway.
I am Steve Topple.
Together we are Topple Galloway and we are live. I mean, we're always alive.
Well,
but
yes.
We're particularly live today. Saves editing and we're all very, very busy.
No, it's not that.
It's
because
not
it's the excitement.
It's the
because
excitement.
anything could happen live with Topple Galloway.
Probably will.
Yes.
You're still in your Russian spy
I know.
gear.
I had a meeting with Putin this morning and I forgot to change. Obviously, yes, I did not have time after. Obviously, it was discussing my next appearance on RT and what propaganda he wanted me to speak.
You look fabulous, by the way. You look as if you walked off the set of Dr. Zhivago, and I mean that in a good way. In the Alec Guinness kind of way.
Okay. This is Nicola's hat. It's my partner's hat. It's not mine. So.
Well, you really should it. She should never get it back. That's what would happen in my case. So, what we're going to talk about?
Well,
have we got any ideas?
We have we got any ideas? We have, of course. We're organised on the Topple Galloway show. We are going to start with. It was a fascinating week for you, George, so far. We are going to start with a certain statue that has been a proposition and
Al fresco Urano, otherwise known as.
Yes, a crapper, in other words. So you.
Go ahead.
It is.
It's going ahead.
Let's just double check that the viewers know what we're talking about. Of course, we're talking about the statue of Margaret Thatcher that is planned in her hometown. You went on Good Morning Britain to discuss this. I watched this. I didn't watch it live. I watched the YouTube version afterwards. It was a wonderful example of how state propaganda works. In other words, there's basically three people against George's lone voice there against the statue of Margaret Thatcher. In the same vein, I remember you went on before about the £50 note.
Yes.
And Thatcher's having a £50 note. But this statue's caused a lot of contention. Now, I think the viewers at home will know your position on it, but do you want to just reiterate why?
Well, the first point to make, Steve, if it's going to be so popular, why is it 10 feet above the ground?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's 10 feet above the ground precisely because it is a provocation against tens of millions of people alive in Britain today who suffered under Margaret Thatcher. Now, Piers Morgan benefited, Susanna Reid benefited if she's old enough, and old Jonathan Aitken, wasn't he looking swell for 76? He is one of the richest men in the country, so he did really well. He even got to go out with her daughter.
I didn't know that.
If that's a benefit in kind, I don't know. But
interesting thought in my head there.
Girlfriend of his. I like Jonathan Aitken. I actually like Susanna and Piers, and I'm glad I got the opportunity because I think I won the argument. But 3 against 1 is a bit much.
Yeah.
I mean, they brought me on to argue against Jonathan Aitken, a former Thatcher cabinet minister. Unfortunately went to prison for some years.
That's what I couldn't remember about. So I was sitting there thinking, I know there's something dodgy about this Jonathan Aitken.
He drew the trusty sword of truth, as he put it, to slay the twisted journalism of the Guardian newspaper in a libel case and lost it.
I knew there was something.
Because it was fairly comprehensively established that he was lying. But look, I didn't want to be mean to the old boy. He's now a priest. He's entirely rehabilitated. He's a Church of England priest. He's a chaplain at Pentonville in prison. He does a lot of good work. I wasn't going to rough him up. There was no need for Piers Morgan and Susanna Reid to quite so enthusiastically back him in every particular in the debate, because that just becomes 3 against 1. He was never interrupted. I was never not interrupted.
Yeah.
There were moments when I was being interrupted every other sentence, maybe even more than that. In fact, embarrassingly for them, at one point, old Jonathan Aitken said to Piers, you're doing rather a good job of making my case for me. But Piers is not the most self-sensitive and perceptive. He ploughed on regardless. He didn't realise the implied rebuke that was in the upper class Jonathan Aitken's words. But look, private devotion. If you love Mrs. Thatcher, get a blow-up doll. If you, sorry, I didn't mean that in the way it sounded. If you love Mrs. Thatcher, create an effigy of her, a voodoo doll, a little statuette, and keep it in a shrine in your house. You can do anything within the law with that statue. But don't, if you'll forgive me, ram it down our throats. Don't spend £300,000 of public money to commemorate someone who, at the very least, divides the country from top to bottom. And I would argue, given that even in her pomp, she never got more than 43% of the popular vote, more people hated Thatcher than liked her. Yeah. That's not to say it's invalid to like her, or that it's not something to be the first woman Prime Minister of a country like Britain. Although to describe her as a feminist is rather belied by the fact she only promoted one woman in her whole 10 years in office into the cabinet. One, she believed in advancement of woman rather than women. But it's not a small thing. You can love her if you like, and you can even, as I say, be a devotee. But if you put something up at public expense, in a public space, you must expect trouble, which is why they've put it on a 10-foot plinth.
Well, yes, of course. I mean, look, there was 3 standout points from your interview on Good Morning Britain for me. One was Piers Morgan's comment about how much Margaret Thatcher did for the progression of feminism, as you just pointed out. I mean, it's a staggering thing to say and shows the inherent sort of classism in his line of thinking, because promoting feminism, I mean, this is a woman who abandoned scorched earth policied so many industrial communities and through hundreds and hundreds of thousands, half of who were women, through hundreds and hundreds of thousands of working class women absolutely on the scrap heap because of her policies. Now that's some sort of bizarre form of feminism, then I am actually a Russian spy. That was one standout point. The second standout point, as you say, was Jonathan Aitken's comment about that they were doing their job for him on the show. Now, I have to say it, George, and if that had been your talk radio show, or if that had been an RT show like our good friend Afshin's Going Underground, and there had been that imbalance in the panel, Ofcom would have been down on you like a ton of bricks. And yet, for Good Morning Britain, that's acceptable to have a complete bias on the subject.
I never thought of that, but that's absolutely correct.
How is that acceptable? But it's not for you.
Yeah.
It's staggering.
It was extremely unbalanced. As was, by the way, did you see Jon Snow's interview of Chris Williamson on Channel 4 News on Venezuela? I urge everyone to watch it. I mean, if that's not Ofcomable, then I'm a Russian spy too.
Well, that segues us into what we're going to talk about next, doesn't it, quite nicely, which is Venezuela. So, no, I didn't see it, so you have to fill me in on the spot.
Yeah, well, I mean, Snow literally assailed him. Williamson was not in the studio. He was being interviewed off-site, as it were, which is always a disadvantage when the person questioning you is in the studio. But he literally assailed him, shouted over him, got his facts wrong, accused Williamson of being in the nasty corner for being against Donald Trump. I mean, all these liberals have spent the last 2 years vituperating against Donald Trump as the worst thing ever to happen. And now that he's declared war on Venezuela, you're in the nasty corner if you oppose him. He got virtually every fact wrong. Williamson, who's a very good performer indeed, just stolidly kept at the metronome, driving home the truth. But I thought, when I watched it, how could Ofcom possibly consider that to be anything other than an abusive trashing of a guest and an utterly biased, totally partial treatment of a matter of great national controversy. But the Venezuelan thing goes from bad to worse, Steve. Half the countries in Europe have recognized this guy in the street that we speak of as the president, even though he didn't stand to be the president. He's 35 years old, lived most of his life in the United States, educated in the United States, is undoubtedly on the payroll of the United States. He's not known by 1 in 8 Venezuelans, according to reputable polling. His demonstrations are about a tenth of the size of Maduro's demonstrations, though what the TV is now doing is showing Maduro demonstrations and calling them protest demonstrations. Well, of course that's true, but they're protesting for Maduro, not against him. So they haven't outright lied. They haven't said this is a demonstration against Maduro, but it's lying by omission.
Yeah, it's biased by omission.
Yeah, totally lying by omission, because any fair reporter would say, hey, there seems to be quite a big division in Venezuela. A lot of people seem to like Maduro and a lot of people seem to dislike him. But if you're going on crowd size, more people like him than dislike him.
Yeah.
Now, that demonstrations are not, of course, the metric. Votes are the metric. And only 2 years ago, Maduro won the presidency in an election described by Jimmy Carter, the guy who got a Nobel Prize for observing elections, as the best he'd observed in the world, in the whole world, better than the US. My goodness, that wouldn't be hard. Better than the UK, better than any other in the world. So, if that's the metric, how is there an issue as to who is the president? You could make an argument. Well, things have gotten so bad in the last 2 years that he should go back to the polls. It's not a great argument, but you could make it. But to pluck somebody out of a hat and say, no, this is now the president, is really going from the sublime to the ridiculous. And they're getting ready for war. No doubt about that.
This is, I totally concur with everything you said. And I did a brief section of this on my podcast last week, Topple Uncaged, for the Canary podcast. And I said, I think we are going to be seeing a sort of new era, if you like, of what I call now, it's not Western imperialism anymore, it is corporatist imperialism that we are seeing, which was similar. It was happening in the 1950s, the Guatemala,
United Fruit Company,
the United Fruit Company in Guatemala. But there's something brewing around the world at the minute. We see the situation in Venezuela, which is ongoing. The protests in Sudan, which are currently happening, they're one to watch, in my opinion. There's government disquiet in Sudan. The people are uprising. My money would be on that there is Western and corporate hands involved in that, because something doesn't smell right at all there. Obviously, we have the ongoing situation in Syria. But the situation in Venezuela, for me, sort of encapsulates this idea of corporate imperialism and backed by Western governments. There was a very interesting story out today, George, I don't know if you saw it or not, on Business Insider. Check it out, which has reported, it's literally in the past few hours, just before lunchtime. The Bank of England has put a hold on all Venezuela's gold reserves that it holds. Now, that is $1.56 billion worth of gold that the Bank of England has stashed for Venezuela, and now it's not going to give it back to them. It is, yeah. That's what I think Maduro came out and said. It's basically it's like that, in the same way that US has put measures in place on its oil sales. It is essentially that. What was interesting for me about this was my brain started ticking over, and I was like, well, why did the Bank of England specifically want to withhold Venezuela's gold and keep it in there? So I sort of looked into what happens with gold at the Bank of England. And of course, what the Bank of England does with foreign gold reserves that it doesn't own but it holds, it uses them as capital to basically borrow more money. So this 1.5...
using other people's gold.
It's using other people's gold as its capital. Now, call me a conspiracy.
And that's normal capitalism. That's
this
before they've actually stolen it.
Yeah. This is normal. So, for me, that's quite interesting. I think it's telling of the broader situation of what is happening to Venezuela. That there is corporate and extra governmental issues at play here. And of course, you can't ignore the fact, as we previously discussed, and as many people on the left have highlighted, that of course Venezuela had the largest known oil reserves.
It's also got gold, diamonds, all kinds of minerals. Yeah. It's a vast country, as the US will find out if they invade it.
Exactly.
I can assure you.
Oil exports account for 50% of GDP in Venezuela at the minute. So, of course, there is an overriding corporate interest in getting their hands into Venezuela and its publicly owned oil company, which represents 50% of its gross domestic product, because, of course, there's money to be made. And it's so... I mean, it's,
I'm glad you read Business Insider. Business Insider, the Financial Times, sometimes The Economist, is where you really find the truth. Because they know that Joe Public and Joanne Public are not normally reading these publications.
Yeah.
It's only those that are up to their necks in the system that are reading these publications. So they don't have to dress it up for the Daily Mail audience or the Sun audience. This is pure, unvarnished capitalist interest that they talk in these publications. And John Bolton on MSNBC, Finance TV, was very blunt, clear about it, as if unembarrassed, certainly unashamed. Yes, this will be a great business opportunity for US oil companies if we can take Venezuelan oil out of state hands, out of public hands. Well, there you have it. He intends to do what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
And these idiot liberals that are going along with this chorus, like Pavlovian dogs, they're told to bark at Maduro, the new Hitler. Haig actually compared him to Hitler in the Telegraph this week. This is William Haig. Need I say more about William Haig? I'll never stop if I do. But this William Haig said that Jeremy Corbyn was morally bankrupt because he argued that we should not be interfering in the domestic affairs of Venezuela. Of course, his comparison was, by that logic, what was happening to the Germans under Hitler was a matter for only the Germans. So there you go. In one leap, not only does Maduro become Hitler, but Corbyn becomes an aide to the new Hitler. It really is Kafkaesque, this whole thing. Are people feeding back, by the way? Well, that's good, because we've got maybe one other subject to discuss. Last word on Venezuela.
Yeah, I want to pick up briefly on something you said there, which was about William Hague, because here we go again. If you look at what he does and what his outside interests outside of Parliament are, of course he heads up Royal United Services Institute. We know that, but he is also the chief executive, and I can't remember the exact name, but it's a stock exchange for commodities like metals, gold, silver, blah blah blah. He has a company which trades in minerals, precious metals, etc., etc. Yeah, I'll get the name. I'll put it under the link for this. And this is the point. But my biggest frustration with this whole situation, as you said, is the liberal barking dogs, because any high school analysis of this situation will come back with the conclusion that this is a capitalist overthrow for financially motivated interests, because we've been here so many times before, and yet they think they can still push this bloody narrative and get away with it.
Well,
and yet the historical evidence...
Isn't that the point?
And this is my broader point, which of course, yes, they still do get away with it, which is a damning indictment, firstly on
us.
Well, it is a damning indictment on us.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Yeah, as Mr. Bush said himself, wasn't it?
Not quite.
He got it wrong. But it's a damning indictment, and there's an issue here, but this is for another show, of the left's message, Corbyn's left message, still not getting through.
Not at all, no. And because they don't have the courage of their convictions.
No, they don't.
Jeremy Corbyn appeared on 500, if not 5,000 platforms, singing the praises of Venezuela. Where is he? It's just not good enough. And you see, it doesn't work because they then dig out the videos of the 500 or the 5,000. And the fact that you're struck dumb now, when you were saying that then, makes you look worse.
It's terrible,
It's
isn't it?
far better to come out fighting, to say, I was with Chavez, I congratulated Maduro. I love many of the things that the Chavez revolution has done in Venezuela. I disagree with them on this, and this, but I will never support Donald Trump invading and overthrowing them. And you, the British government, for recognising it. Why not come out like that? If you do, you'll get far more respect from people.
Yeah, I know. But that goes back to his advisors, in my opinion. And
I wish it did.
Well, that's for another show as well. Are you coming with the comments?
Coming with the comments.
Okay,
You
quickly.
can scroll through
You're
them
dressed
all,
like
yeah.
a Russian too.
Yes, I thought I'd dress for the occasion.
So, what are people saying
Like a
on
set
Twitter?
of Dr. Zhivago in here, or Reds.
Okay. Let's build the statue so we can destroy it, says Victor Machus on YouTube. Yes, build the Thatcher statue
We
so
must,
we can tear it down.
we must not be complicit in that demand, of course.
No, of course,
But
I wouldn't advocate
As a
destroying
child, I'm not advocating this. In fact, I'm advocating against this. You understand me? But as a child, I was in Dublin, in a bed and breakfast, just off O'Connell Street, one Sunday morning when there was a very loud bang. And when we all rushed out into O'Connell Street, there was a large pile of rubble where Nelson's column used to be. Yeah, I was there as a small child. I remember it.
But
I
we do not
really
have
hope
this.
that doesn't happen in Grantham, because I wouldn't like any stray dogs and cats around the monument to be injured by the falling masonry.
Yes.
Ofcom cannot police this, by the way.
No, they can't. It's YouTube. We can say what we want. Yes. Alex. Hello, Alex Tiffin, my mate Alex Tiffin from the Universal Credit Sufferer website. Please check him out.
a good man.
His Twitter feed is @RespectIsVital. He's excellent. Really good at what he does. He says, snow was disgusting to Chris Williamson. Yes. Who else have we got? George, you need to get on Joe Rogan. Who's Joe Rogan? I don't know who that is.
Joe Rogan needs to get on Topple Galloway.
I don't know who that is. Sorry, I can't help you there. Mr. Methuselah says, George, I will never forget and can't thank you enough for your epic testimony in front of the US Congress on the Iraq War. You totally own them. Yes, that's on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, check that shit out. Check that out. It's wonderful. Are we allowed to swear?
We're allowed but shouldn't.
Yes, right. That will do me. Why is the British so afraid of the USA? I would argue that they're actually not that afraid, in my opinion. I think we underestimate actually the influence that our crony establishment has over the US.
We're not the tail. I mean, Blair was America's brain.
Yeah.
In the Iraq
Yeah,
War.
yeah,
The
exactly.
president's
That whole
brain-
triangulation and then the Iraq War. Yeah.
the president's brain being otherwise missing.
Can't think where that was. Yes, lovely. Lots of comments. Please keep them coming. There is actually lots of comments where I can't go through them.
Yeah,
It's
good.
fantastic.
Especially as we've got one more thing to discuss.
We have got one more thing to discuss, yes, and we were talking about Corbyn just before we started looking at the comments. There has been a massive hullabaloo thanks to the wonderful people at the Red Raw. If you're watching,
It's sort of a pink whimper.
It is. I salute you by flipping you the bird, which I won't do, but if you know what flipping you the bird means, you know what I mean, the Red Raw. Hello, and hope you're keeping well.
Hello, pink whimper. However,
yes, so the Red Raw...
there was the return of Owen Smith, wasn't it?
It was. The Red Raw...
The ice
Red Raw,
screamer.
Yeah.
Viagra man. You know he was a Viagra salesman, yeah?
Yeah. So it was Pfizer, wasn't it? Was he Pfizer?
Yeah, Pfizer, yeah. But his subdivision, if you'll forgive me,
was it?
Was Viagra.
Yes.
Owen Smith was
Another.
firm. He was hard in his political outlook. He was erect to any danger.
Can
or
I
threat.
just say, Mr. Galloway, the puns are usually my area, thank you, so don't nuzzle in on my euphemisms.
Well, he
thank you.
ejaculated today.
God. Yes, he did.
He ejaculated
ejaculated.
today, attacking Jeremy Corbyn, and reminded us that he's still alive, and reminded me of that glorious rally he had in Liverpool.
Oh, was
the
it
ice
five?
cream-
5 people?
An ice cream van, told that there was going to be a political rally,
yes.
turned up, fully stocked with ice cream cones for the crowd.
I remember that well, yes.
There
it was
was
delicious.
one customer standing at the ice cream van, licking her cone, and the young woman herself has just sent me the picture because I jokingly asked, are there any images of this great man's great rally in Liverpool? And she sent it me, and there she is licking her cone. And there is Owen Smith talking to 7 people, 3 of whom worked for him, in Liverpool. I mean,
I know.
Anyway,
That was a glorious time. I remember that period.
Let's not shoot the messenger.
No.
The video is interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So the bottom line of the story is, if you haven't seen it, don't look at the Red Raw, please. If you must see this, look at Owen Smith's timeline on Twitter. The long and short of this, the Red Raw unearthed this video from 2009, where Jeremy Corbyn was speaking in Ireland on their referendum over the Lisbon Treaty, and of course, it's been unearthed that Corbyn was advocating for the EU. He called it a possible Frankenstein's sort of military monster.
Frankenstein, yeah.
Telling the truth, and advocating for obviously a vote in Ireland about the Lisbon Treaty. And he was saying if the second referendum doesn't go the way, they'll have a third referendum, etc., etc., etc. Basically, it was very sort of anti-EU speech. Like this is some shock about Corbyn.
And by the way, in it, he says, I wish we had a referendum in Britain.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole hullabaloo that Owen Smith made of this was that Corbyn was showing that he was for Brexit from the start, and he would instigated, paraphrasing, but instigated no matter what. That was
complicit with Brexit.
That's the one. Yeah, that's what he said. So this is again, George, another story out of nothing here, because everyone knew Corbyn's views on the EU from the start. Corbyn was, of course, doing what he should have done, but going with the party line, if you like, and he has maintained the party line. This whole situation with the People's Vote, the conference was very clear, as it's been masticated and spat out more times than I can to remember, about what conference actually voted for with regards to what Labour would do in the event of trying to force the situation with regards to Brexit. But with the mutterings that there could be a possible general election in June, which we've seen, do you think we're now going to see a ratcheting up of the anti-Corbyn propaganda?
Because the anti-Semitism thing has been fantastically ramped up just in the last few days. The attack on Corbyn, the attack on the Labour General Secretary, Jenny Formby, the whole dial on the industrialised, weaponised anti-Semitism smear has been turned up to maximum, as has the Venezuela one, as now is the Brexit one. And all of that seems to me to presage either another leadership challenge by somebody, or a breakaway by the perennial hopefuls, Chuka Umunna and Ian Austin and the rest, or a general election, or any permutation of these things. And therefore, people should fasten their seatbelts. Corbyn is not unmasked in that video in any way, shape or form. Those were his views then. They may even still be his views now. If they are, it's all the more to his credit that he fought in the way that he did for a Remain vote in the referendum, because he was the leader of a Labour Party that wanted to remain. That was his job description, to fight for that. I didn't agree with it. If I'd been in the Labour Party, I would have campaigned against him for Brexit, but then I'm not the leader. He's the leader of a party that didn't want Brexit, so he did his duty. He was honest. He was asked what marks out of 10 he would give it. He said 7.5. I thought that was a trifle generous, but he would have been a total liar to say 9.5.
No, exactly.
Or even 8.
I don't see. This is such a nonsense, and it's to be honest, it's so boring, George. This nonsense.
It's reminded everyone that Owen Smith is still alive.
It has, but you know what? Actually, it also reminds us of, and I think every story that we've covered today reminds us of this. Don't believe everything you read in the papers. Essentially, because each of these stories has been punctuated by spin and lies.
You should believe nothing that you read in the papers.
Exactly.
You should believe nothing that you see on the television, nothing that you hear on the radio. You have to, and you can now. Ignorance is a choice now.
It is. There's no
If you
excuse.
hear something on the TV or read it in the newspapers, go online and check it out. Go to other different platforms, widely divergent platforms. Read, as I have all my life, the Financial Times and the Morning Star. And I know that between the Financial Times and the Morning Star, I'm going to get where it's at. I'm going to get the hard financial facts and truth from the Financial Times. and I'm going to get the correct political analysis of those facts in the Morning Star.
Exactly. We don't
Think
look like
more, read more.
Yeah. We don't look like Mulder and Scully, but the truth is out there if you look for it, of course. Quickly, because we're now really out of time, let's have a look at some of the comments. Pro-illusionists, but I think the video from 2009, this is Corbyn video, will help Corbyn and Labour win votes, to be honest, from what I've heard of Tory and Leave Labour voters on the radio. It's quite an interesting point.
Yeah.
It could actually prove positive
Yeah,
for Corbyn.
yeah.
That's, again, his views on the
Wouldn't that be ironic?
That would be very
For the
ironic.
pink whimper.
It would be bloody delicious. It would be delicious. It would be lovely. What else are people saying? Yes, Alex Tiffin quite rightly pointed out the situation in 2009 with this Irish referendum. They rejected the Lisbon Treaty, so they made them vote again.
Yeah.
Didn't they?
And Jeremy was predicting
Jeremy was
they'll probably
right.
make you vote again.
Exactly. So.
And he was right.
Yep.
That's what they've been trying to do here. It's what Owen Smith's trying to do, actually.
Yep. Exactly. And Pro-Illusionist also said, I was rereading Alex Nunn's, my mate Alex Nunn's, hello, the candidate recently, and the ice cream moment with Owen Smith made me laugh all over again.
It is. It's truly,
truly
wonderful. Well, Owen Smith was brought out. Viagra Man rose up again.
Yes.
But I'm not sure he's quite as tumescent now as he might have thought he would be.
Indeed. And that is it for our first ever live stream of Topple Galloway. How was that for you, George?
It was.
Was it?
The earth moved.
Did it? Thank you, Owen Smith. Lovely. And that is it. So don't forget to follow us on Twitter. It's at Mr. Topple. And of course, if you're watching this, you hopefully will be on at George Galloway. Anyway, and we will be back next week for another live stream.
You've got your canary uncaged.
Oh yes. Topple Uncaged podcast out every Sunday just before midday.
That's very important. I've got my mother of all talk shows,
Even more important.
permitting, on Friday evenings on Talk Radio between 7 and 10. And Gayatri and me are presenting Sputnik on Saturdays on RT, which is